Okay, so this is not absolutely everything that's probate court related, but it's quite inclusive. With that said, if there's certain nuances that are always going to be unique, addressed differently by county, that's one of the things that's somewhat difficult with the probate process, is each county has their own small tweaks, but in a nutshell, this is what the process is. So I want to talk about the definitions, the process, the different types of orders, some tips and questions. So right off the bat, this definition is taken right from the Mental Health Code. This has recently, and when I say recently, now it's been 3 years, this definition has become less restrictive, because before a person had to be in imminent harm, they're going to hurt themselves or someone else significantly within the near future. That went from imminent harm to it's reasonable to expect that they're going to hurt themselves or someone else. So it loosened up a little bit as far as what we would consider a person requiring treatment. And this is the definition for a person requiring treatment on mandated treatment, court order type of treatment. And again, there's multiple nuances. So this could include looking at someone for hospitalization, mandated treatment, or outpatient therapy treatment. Whoa. Okay, so this is why Kevin's law is the law that made a person requiring treatment more expanded. Kevin he's the gentleman in the picture. He was on his way to U of M or on his way back from U of M to go to school to be a social worker. And he was at a bus stop in Kalamazoo, and then there was a gentleman named Brian. He was in his 40s. He was one of those individuals, because that prior definition of what a person is requiring treatment was so specific that they had to be in imminent harm of hurting themselves. He fell through the cracks. He didn't meet criteria for inpatient hospitalization. However, he needed treatment. So there wasn't enough there to do the petition to start the hospitalization process, and he fell through the cracks. So ultimately, Brian was untreated, not well, and he ended up stabbing Kevin, and Kevin died as a result of that. So when that happened, that's when Michigan looked at the law, and the law is actually, it was from the early 2000s, but the way it was just written poorly. Judges didn't understand it. We never really, the probate system never enforced it. So with the adoption of this is you can do mandated treatment for inpatient hospitalization and outpatient. And that becomes a very critical part when we talk about inpatient and outpatient, because it's combined. You're going to see combined over and over and over throughout the presentation. And that's what we're talking about, is inpatient and outpatient. So it lowered the threshold. It allowed more people to be on an order or start that process. And then the old way is you had to be hospitalized in order to start the process. Now we can do that from the outpatient clinic. We do have a few folks that do it. Some of the difficulties with that is they have to be already established in our sake with one of our psychiatrists, because we still do need a clinical cert completed on the person. And then you would continue the process as normal. So when we talk about an AOT only, that's referring to outpatient services only, and that's everything that we all provide as outpatient services. The orders are very easy to modify. So if it's one of those things that we need the person, they're not coming in, but they finally show for one, but they don't necessarily meet the criteria for hospitalization, or they're resistant to hospitalization, and you're working on building that rapport, but you know sooner or later that person is going to need hospitalization, I would say do the outpatient only first, because it's going to be easy to modify. The pickup order is already within the outpatient order, So we can still, there's 10 days in it. We'll talk about that more in a little bit, but to keep that rapport, that is a clinical strategy that we can use to help that when we have someone that's so ill. So the petition, so here's one of the things that gets really confusing, and not so much for us since we're in the field, but especially when you're talking with families and you're trying to provide some psychoeducation, or people don't necessarily, your own consumer might not understand it. A petition does not mean that the person is going to be hospitalized. So anybody can complete a petition. They have to be 18 years or older. I could complete a petition on Erica right now just as much as Erica could complete a petition on me. We have to prove that it is that the person is having a thought process that's going to unintentionally or intentionally hurt themselves, not taking care of their needs, lacks insight. So we have to demonstrate that. And I have an example of a petition coming up, so we'll see how that applies into the form. And then when we say a probated petition, that is actually when we have to go to the probate court, they stamp it, time stamp, date, and it gets a file number. Because when we're looking at, for those working in crisis or for ACT, if you're meeting with your consumer and they're already at the ER, you don't have to worry about, they've got theirs. Part of the thing that's embedded within the petition is transport to the ER. So if they're already at the ED, you don't have to, and I apologize because I use those terms intermingling. Old school is ER, new school, they're trying to really focus that more onto ED, emergency department, because a lot more stuff happens at the ED than there's a lot of reasons why people present there. So that's why they're changing their philosophy from an emergency room to it's a department. So I apologize for the confusion off the bat. So it can be a friend, a family member, it can be a clinician, it could be the psychiatrist. However, we would want to hold off from the psychiatrist completing the petition because we want the psychiatrist to complete the clinical cert. And I also have spots for breaks and questions, but if you have a question that comes up, please feel free, unmute yourself. I'll be able to see it, and then just ask away. So I just talked about it a little bit on that last slide, but here's the specific rationale for a petition. This too will come up again at the very end of the presentation or at the end of someone's court process. So here, this is one of the things that it's difficult for when police are trying, if we ask for a police well check, or even emergency room doctors. So when we're looking at a reasonable expectation to do intentional or unintentional harm to self or others, the biggest thing that gets missed on that is psychotic thinking. And it's, a lot of people will say, well, they're psychotic. They're not saying that they want to kill themselves, so they're not suicidal. So they're not at intentional or unintentional harm to themselves. However, they are, because their thought process is not based in reality. And we know how many of our folks, when they are super ill, have they gotten into accidents? Have they been hurt? Have they had interactions with the police? And I want someone to remind me about that later, because I don't have that in there in the presentation. But the police interactions is a huge, huge piece I want to touch on. So a lot of times where you'll find this disagreement on psychotic thinking, that if they're harm to themselves or someone else, typically is, I've experienced it with the police and the emergency room doctor. The ED doctor will say, well, I'm not going to take their rights away from them. They're not at risk of harming themselves. And then my reply is, but their tattoos are talking to them. That is not based in reality. This individual believed that the tattoos were talking to him, that they were giving him orders, telling him things to do. That right there can cause unintentional harm. He could harm himself. He could harm other people. He could, maybe his tattoos are telling him to, you know, do a 50-meter sprint, and he sprints out into the main road, you know? So that most definitely is one of those pieces that's easily overlooked because it's not one of those blatant, direct, I'm going to kill myself, I have a loaded gun to my head, or else I'm stockpiling all my meds. Not taking care of basic needs. And if you look, I have these noted on here as A, B, and C, and this is exactly how they look on the petition under number 3. And the reason why I mention that is because when we get on the petition, whichever of these boxes that you check, you have to support. So when we talk about not taking care of their basic needs, tell me what that means. How long has it been since they slept? How long since they have not had anything to eat? Are they not drinking water because they believe that the water is poison? And then the lack of insight for treatment, that could look like a multiple different ways. It could be that they're not coming in for appointments. They could be coming in for some of their appointments, but not attending them all. They could be saying, no, I don't need your services. Thank you very much. Goodbye. It could be, I'm not going to go to the hospital. There's nothing wrong with me. Or it could be that they're coming into every single appointment and there's nothing changing. There's no gain for that need for treatment. They're doing just the bare minimum. Now, this is where we talk about how the criteria for a petition has lowered, because now keep that in mind when we're talking about, this is more than just needing the hospital. This is people who need that continued outpatient treatment. So that's where, you know, to open up your view on what does it mean to lack insight for treatment. Are they coming in and attending their appointments, but then they tell you, yeah, as soon as this court order's done, I'm out of here? And you know that they're still ill, you know that there still hasn't been that lack of insight, or there still is that lack of insight. So here is the petition, and I don't know, is my cursor showing up on your guys' side? Okay, so here's the A, B, and C that correlate to this page, the A, B, and C. So A, I just broke it down. I just picked a few words out. So A is definitely that it's reasonable. That's that key word that's different from the old school line of thinking that we only need to do hospital. This is now the, do they need hospital and or outpatient treatment? Is it reasonable to expect in the near future that they're going to hurt themselves, hurt someone else? Engage in acts, have made threats. B is not attending to those basic needs. C is that lack of insight. Then in these cute 2 little lines is where you provide your rationale for A, B, and C. I don't know about you, but I usually say a little bit more than those 2 lines. So you could write something like C attached and add a document to accompany the petition. Keep in mind, whatever you put on the petition, the individual is given a copy of that. If this continues through, the individual gets a copy of that, and it gets read to them. So with that said, yes, there's only 2 lines. Maybe you are one of those super wordy persons, and maybe you need to remember there's only 2 lines. Keep it short and keep it succinct, and to support your A, B, and C. You don't need to provide a clinical history. You don't need to provide what happened at the appointment on June 3rd at 2:15 in the afternoon. You can just give short explanations of how they're at risk, how are they not taking care of themselves, and the lack of insight could simply mean they told me they don't want to come anymore. So on this form, if they've been on the court order process in the past, that file number, which is in the top right corner, that follows them throughout the end. Once they get one file number, that sticks with them for the whole rest of their life in that county. And so you can just go back through, you can look in Sigmo and look under court orders and find that file number there. One thing, this is just one thing that always threw me off. I'd get writing their birthday, and then I'd always start their address in that second line, permanent residence, and then they're asking for the county. You make that mistake a few times and then you finally correct yourself. The second page, you guys are always, if you're completing the petition, you are an interested party. So you would put your name, caseworker, therapist, CMH, put the office address. Remember that piece about they get this. While all of our information, I hate to break it to you, all of our information is pretty easy to find on the internet. I can find pretty much where anybody lives without paying for any special services, but we still don't need to spoon feed individuals our information. So always put your work address and your work phone number. If they have, a lot of people tend to miss this spot too. This one is if they have a guardian, you put their guardianship file number here and which county it was filed in. That is because if they go to hearing or the hearing gets scheduled and they don't stipulate, the guardian has to be notified to attend. 7, you would check whatever is appropriate. Now here is 8. 8 is if you're needing them hospitalized when you're filling this out. 8 is your transport, or 8 and 9 is your just 8. 8 is your transport order. So you have to ask the individual if they want to go to the ER, right, Nicole? We were pleasantly surprised on a recent event. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you'll be surprised how many people are actually just willing to go to the hospital. So don't violate their rights. Not a good thing.
No, and Nicole did violate the rights. She did not violate the rights, but it turned out to be, we were anticipating a rather long drawn out process. But even if you are doing like a continued order or anything else when you're dealing with a pickup order, you always got to ask if they are willing to go to the hospital. And then for number 8, it could be really simple of, yes, I asked them and they refused. Or else person refused, person's not answering their phone. So that's where you are documenting your attempt. The I request, the subset to there, so you can either put, some like Midland, you guys only have Mid-Michigan. Isabella, we have Mid-Michigan and McLaren. Won't have anybody from any other counties on here. So you can put nearest ED, you can put Mid-Michigan. One of the things that I would also put on there, you could also add or other appropriate facility. And the reason why I highlight that is one of our persons, probate, had an issue with it because when they got to, I think it was Cedar Creek, when they filled out their form for the for the order, they put Cedar Creek. So in the court's mind, we could not hospitalize that individual anywhere else but Cedar Creek. And it was an epic fail of a discharge plan. Person ended up being extremely ill, needed hospitalization less than a week after they discharged. So since then, it takes these little learning opportunities to realize next time I'm going to put in there nearest ER, ED, or other appropriate facility, because then you're not going to run into that pigeonhole where they can only go to one place. And then I would always suggest that you guys check B. So that's the combination hospitalization outpatient, unless you're doing an outpatient order only. Because if you are doing the combination, you have to have 2 clinical certs. You're doing outpatient only, it's 1 clinical cert. And the reason why this is important, so you get the petition completed, filled out, And then give me a nod if you've filled out an order recommendations already. So whatever you fill out on the order recommendations, because it's going to ask you, are you wanting combined? You want how many days, etc. This has to match the petition. They have to be the same, because the petition is what gets served to the individual, whether it's on the mental health unit or you're serving the person. So they have to be prepared for whatever we're petitioning and asking for is the same thing that we're recommending. And then
before you go on to 10, Shauna.
Yeah.
8, the I request section.
Yeah.
It looks to me like both of those would be the nearest ER/ED or other appropriate facility, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because
B is
your transport order.
B is the transport, and then A is the examination by us.
Okay.
And that gets sticky too. I'm not going to get into that, but the B or A is the, do they meet the criteria? Let's lay a set of eyes on them. B is the police take them there.
And those are only if you were unable to secure an examination.
Correct. Or if they needed to be hospitalized. And so you need to do the examination. Because you could, in theory, you could do an emergency screen on, say you're meeting with one of your consumers at their home, and you call me and you're like, Shauna, yeah, this person needs hospitalization. So you did your examination, but then you call them and say, hey, Joe Bob, can you come join me at the ER? I'm concerned for you. I think you really need some additional treatment. And they say no, then you have to do, then you still fill out A and B, although you've already done your examination. Does that?
Okay, so that examination is not necessarily a psychiatric examination. It's just somebody laid eyes on him or her. Kind of, maybe?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it's when we're thinking about examination, yes, I guess we're kind of split. Maybe in my head, we're splitting hairs on the examination part, because if you go out and meet with them and say in the dream world, you've got enough time that you can complete an emergency screen, you just did the examination. But
okay. But if it's a family member doing it, then they wouldn't really be qualified for that.
Exactly. Right. Yes. So we're talking about both avenues of, us filling it out, police filling it out, or family filling it out. It could be filled out by anybody.
Okay.
So even if it's one of us that, we did lay a set of eyes on them long enough and we were able to complete an emergency screen, I would still check to be examined, because if we know that they have to, if we're admitting for a mental health unit, we've got to get them medically screened. So they got to go to the ED.
That's true. Yep.
Okay. No, I'm good questions. Good questions. Anything else on the petition right now?
So are we talking, so this is not like the repetition, is it?
Nope.
Okay, I have a question about that part.
Love it. I love it. And I don't know why, but court order stuff excites me.
So on this form for the initial petition, 10 would always be selected. I request the individual be hospitalized pending a hearing. No?
No, not unless it would not be selected if you wanted to do outpatient only. So let me give you an example of when that would be appropriate, because that might be sometimes a hard thing. So say we've got, imagine if you might work for an agency that is changing its service delivery model from individual to team-based care. And then say there hypothetically might be some shifts in cases. And during that shift in the case, Joe Bob's on an order, and then when he gets transferred to somebody else, between all of the confusion and everybody trying to figure out which way is up, his order gets lapsed. But we know that Joe Bob needs an order. He's not sick enough that he needs to go to the hospital just yet, but Joe Bob needs an order. So that's when we would check 9C. We wouldn't have to check 8 because we're not asking him to be examined for the hospital. He just needs outpatient treatment. So we would not check 8. We would check 9C. We would not check 10.
What would we check for 7 in that case?
In that case, so
Oh, I see it.
we would,
Only
well,
assisted outpatient treatment is requested.
yes. And my suggestion for that, so this is one of the reasons why probate gets so uptight regarding when we submit the documentation, timelines. I mean, we all know that there's that timeline that we have to abide by, but they also have to abide by their own timeline. And so the day that I submit this paperwork, and so they need to get a hearing scheduled. Probate has 7 days to get a court date on the books within 7 days.
Not including weekends, right?
Not including Sunday or holidays.
But they do include Saturday then.
Yes.
Oh.
So with that said, it's pretty naughty of us to file something on a Friday afternoon. Because regardless of what time that we submit that documentation, say we submit it at 3:30 in the afternoon, that still counts as day 1. And so we know what it's like when we have all sorts of paperwork that we're trying to get done, and then we get this urgent matter that comes in, and you're trying to juggle which one comes first. So this is where if you've ever worked with probate, occasionally you might feel a little bit of tension coming from them. This would be one of those examples. And so from all of my discussions with them, the preferred time, and especially if they understand if it's an unexpected crisis, we didn't know anything about what was going on, you just got to roll with it. But if it's someone, especially more so, Megan, with your question with the continued petition, we know they still have to abide by that 7 days. So let's try to get that paperwork in as early in the day as possible. Even if it's something that, it's the afternoon, there's this crisis that it's boiling, you can sense that, this person's really, man, they're sick, they need to go to the hospital. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I would really honestly look at the whole situation. I would consult with your supervisor and go, okay, if this person doesn't get to the hospital tonight, are they going to hurt someone? If you can coordinate with family, get a set of eyes on them, help with some extra safety plan support for that night, honestly, I would hold off to file that paperwork until 8 a.m. that next day. Okay, so the next piece is the clinical cert piece. And so I will answer your question. So the clinical cert is only valid for 72 hours. So we've got, if we look back onto 7, the clinical cert attached by psychiatrist or physician, psychiatrist, if we're doing an AOT only, this is the 7-day, this is one of those exceptions to the rules, and this is why probate court matter stuff gets so mind-boggling. So for AOT onlys, you have 28 days to get in to get a court date scheduled. With that said, since the person is already involved with our services, and there's not that emergency that they're going to hurt themselves if we don't get this process done right away, I would coordinate the time that you are filling out your petition for outpatient only services to coordinate with the same time that they have a med review, so you can turn it in with the cert. While this says no clinical cert is attached because you're wanting outpatient only, I would ignore that. You could even, if this feels really weird, you can just draw a line through no and check that box. Clinical cert attached, because it's outpatient only. It just makes it easier on us, because if that individual, if we file this petition prior to the med review, they get a court date scheduled, and then they don't show up, what happens to this petition? Is it still valid? Yeah, Megan. It's a big fat no. So then what we have to do, us as clinicians, then we have to write the courts and ask to withdraw the petition. So instead of dealing with that whole hot mess, wait until you have the clinical cert in hand and then turn them both in at the same time. So now with the clinical cert, so if it's outpatient only, we only need one. Inpatient, there's certain time frames that we have to hit it. And this is not so much us that has to hit it. This is the responsibility of the psychiatrist. So one thing that really always throws people off is they say the second cert must be completed by a psychiatrist within 24 hours. Sometimes the ED gets a little caught up in their own thoughts, and they're like, the person's been here for 36 hours, and so now the cert's invalid. This is 24 hours from the time of admission. And then if they're in the ED for that long, if there is an extended period of time, I would just simply, to avoid confusion, to avoid any kind of mishaps, I would ask if the treating physician would complete a new cert prior to admission. Then there's no questions. The cert's pretty basic, and then depending on the doctor, I've seen some rough certs. I've seen, you know, that on the second page where they just write see above, see above, see above, see above. And I'm seeing some head nods is that, yeah, you've seen those too. One of the biggest things that you'll want to look for, and we don't necessarily have to worry about it so much with our doctors, but more so, say if you were out on that home visit and your individual was ill and required treatment, and you had the time, we're in magic land right now, you had the time, they agreed to go to the ED with you, but then they were on that, no, I'm not going to stay, so now you got to do the petition and cert. I would double check the ED doctors. The number 6, my diagnosis is, that has to be a diagnosis from the DSM. I will tell you, suicidal is not a diagnosis. I have seen that more times than I care to even tell you guys. And so that's part of just us working together and having that collaborative relationship with outside agencies. I would also double check too, if you happen to step in and see your individual at the ER or the ED. One time I did see a nurse that she put her home address on the petition. And I said, you might want to redo that. You know, we're the experts in the mental health field, they're not. So and let me tell you, it does feel awkward. You are not correcting anybody, you're working together as a collaborative team. And then hopefully the cert matches the recommendations from the petition, but not always. A lot of times the ED docs will put hospitalization only. This is a new form. So this MC97 is a form to protect personal identifying information. This you only have to worry about when you complete the petition. And I toyed around with which step to put this in, and I really couldn't fit any good step. So basically what it is the MC97 is not a public document. The petition is. Which just kind of like for us, if you let that sink in for a second, we're dealing with the mental health code and HIPAA and CF42R and all of these other protected laws. The petition isn't. Granted, it is hard to find if you're trying to find it online, and not all courts have their information online, but you could do a FOIA, you could do a Freedom of Information Act and say, if I was on a court order, you could go and request my files. It's not a protected information. With this, with the MC97, it's to protect identifying information. So you put this in for their date of birth, you put what information. Of course, we're not going to worry about driver's license, passport number. We're just going to do mainly 1, 2, and 3. And this is the form in its entirety. It's not a big form. So when you go back to the petition where it says individual born on, you wouldn't put their birth date. You put MC97 and the case number. So then it's a refer to this document. That is a change as of 13 days ago. And this
You
is
said not to mark driver's license, but then you said we do 1, 2, and 3. Which is it?
oh, well, because I was counting references number 1. Good catch.
Okay.
Good catch.
Thank you.
Yes. So you do 1 and 2, and you ignore half of the things that I say.
Is there the option, so how on the petition when you would write there, instead of their date of birth, MC97 is what you would write, is there the option to go back and make this retroactive?
No,
No, okay.
no. If you've already done it in the last 13 days, probate should have caught it, and they would have sent it back to you. At this point in time, I would just say, move forward in future, young woman. And then name a form document that the MC97 is being filed with. You would do the PCM 201. That's the petition. Or when we talk about the continued petition, that one. Okay, so whew, a lot of court documents, a lot of court stuff. There's a lot rolling around in the brain right now trying to absorb it all. Don't put that pressure on you. You don't need to.
What if we don't know the judge right offhand?
It's going to be the Isabella, it's Judge Black. Midland, it's Judge Allen. So I would always address it to them. And then if you're dealing with someone out of county, honestly, if it were me, I would Google what's the probate judge for Clinton County and find it online. Or you could just put Your Honor. Tammy?
So as an outpatient therapist, how often would I do this?
Rare. Rare like a steak.
What's that?
I said rare like a steak. And that,
Okay.
and that is why my expectations for you to remember this is nothing.
Okay.
And I do not mean that in the negative sense. I mean
No,
that
no.
in the, take the
Yeah.
pressure off from you. There's no reason why you need to be able to whip one out without asking any questions. What
Okay.
my hopes would be is you try your best, you fill out what you can, and then come see me or someone else. Even though that I'm in Isabella County, Midland people, and Megan knows, call me. I'm happy to answer any questions the best I can.
Even when she's recovering, she's like, call me. I'm like, no, but you're recovering.
Yeah, because I have surgery coming up in a couple of weeks. So, but it's just my knee. So it's not, won't be my brain. Any other questions on just the beginning of the court process? Petition, Cert, MC97.
The only forms that we're using this MC97 with is the petition and the repetition, right? Whether that's a second or a continued, correct?
Correct. Because
Okay.
if you think about it, and probably guardianship too, but this isn't a guardianship training. But if you think about it, any court document that you have to put their date of birth, that protected personal information in,
Yep.
think, oh, MC97, because there's 200 forms that were affected.
Is the address also protected with this MC-97 or not?
No, because that is not, the protected information is just this 1 through 5.
Okay. In and other, I wonder what that could be.
For others, specify the type of PII in addition to the PII itself.
What does PII mean again?
PII is protected, or it's personal identifying information.
Oh, okay, there it is, the PII.
That could be like a maiden name.
Possibly.
So just so I'm understanding this right, any petition that we're doing now, this MC-97 is now a part of it?
Yep.
Okay, got it.
Is
Okay.
it just one page, the MC-97?
Yeah, that made me excited. Like, this is too small.
In a financial institution and account number. I don't think
Well-
we'll be using that.
No, we wouldn't. Keep in mind, this form affects 200 other documents.
Wow.
So, yeah, so it could be, they had a whole list of all of the different forms. There's a lot of judicial, as far as criminal justice forms that were on there, possibly even friend of court, that type of information. So if you get bored in your free time and you have it's SCOA, SCOA, I believe it is. That's the I always type in Michigan mental health forms, court forms, and it pops right up. And I get the O and the A flip-flop, so I can't tell you which direction it is. But you can hit the search button and hit MC-97, and it will give you really good information as far as why it's changed, all the forms that this is affecting, etc. I do not know. So Megan posted a question directly to me, is, does the hospital practice this process as well? My answer is they should be. Again, as since we are the mental health professionals, and since we are the ones that are we know that if the case is going to be ours and we're overseeing it, I would double check. And if it squeaks by, I would just either let Drew know, or Mandy, Drew, Midland, Mandy, Isabella, to say, hey, I noticed this was missed. Then they might have, I would imagine, and I'm just playing it with an imaginary dartboard right now, I would imagine that we would just do an amended petition. We would go to this box up here where we can click to amend it. And then we could do the MC-97 in the date born on address.
So to alleviate paperwork, when a person is coming up for not a renewal, but a continuance of a order, can we just amend it at that point?
Well, if they're doing a continuance, you're going to be filing a new petition.
Oh, okay.
The 201 is just, think of number 1 as first step.
Okay.
Number 1 is first. Once you get further in, then you can have that option. This right here, this is just nutshell of where it starts. This is not the full process, but this is, I wanted to show this, give a visual, because when we miss something, if again with Joe Bob, he needs to be on an order, we miss it, we have to start all the way back to petition is completed. And then every single time, they always, first cert, second cert if inpatient's needed. But regardless of if it's 1 cert or 2 certs, they still have to meet with an attorney. They still have the option to defer. They still have the option to stipulate, or the option to request a jury trial. And I throw that last one in there because I have yet had the wonderful experience of a jury trial. I don't know about you, but if it were me, I wouldn't mind avoiding that experience. So I'd want to make sure that I get this information completed, continue the petition, so I don't have to experience that if it's needed.
Can you
Here's
go
more.
back? Oh, sorry. Can you go back to that form?
Which one?
The PC 97, sorry.
Yeah.
The MC 97. Who's the plaintiff and who's the defendant?
We are the plaintiff.
Okay.
The defendant, think of it as far as I'm trying to defend myself. The defendant is the person who we are trying to create some type of action to.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I didn't know that. I should, but
No, that's a good question. Because Cindy, if you didn't ask, someone else had the same question, you know?
and then in the matter of would still be the defendant's name, right?
That's a good question. Because I don't know if in the matter of if you would put the defendant's name, I imagine so, or if you put the type of proceeding it is in, like mental health court order. I have to find that is a very, very good question.
Okay. And then at the very top left,
Yeah.
it's Isabella County Probate. We would put the Isabella there or Midland, right?
Right, in the bottom, whoops, I tried clicking on the form. Yeah, in that bottom, you would put probate.
Okay.
Yep. And then I will find out I'll do some research on what you put in there for the matter of and email it out to you guys when I email the forms out.
Okay.
So, like I said, this is a nutshell. This is not a nutshell. This is, this is something that, it's SCAO. Told you I had the A and the O backwards. So Robin Eagleson, she is the head probate person for the state of Michigan. So all of our probate clerks get their direction from Robin. And so this is the flow chart. Here you see this, the second one down, court hearing date within 7 days or 28 days if it's an AOT only. So that's where you start to see some of this. Here is, remember I told you we have all of our timelines, but they have all of theirs. So, they have to be given, the consumer has to be given a copy of the petition, the cert, the right of notice within 4 days of when probate court receives the documents, stamps them, sends them back to the unit. We don't see this part because that typically happens on a mental health unit. Then they have 48 hours to get legal counsel, so I'm not going to bust through all of this because you guys are going to get a copy of this too. I feel that you guys passed either grad school or undergrad, so you probably are very equipped at reading. So I don't want to necessarily read for you. It's all right there.
This is just for the initial petition, though. This is not a repetition.
Correct. Right. So this is why. What's that?
Because I can read.
This is why, too, that it's important to not miss, to really watch your dates when they're coming up. Okay, so.
What it doesn't have for us that's really important is the proof of
service.
Service, yes.
That should, see, when they're at the hospital, it happens at the hospital.
Yes, okay. But when, for repetitions and stuff, yeah. Okay.
Because when a person's in the hospital, they get the notice of hospitalization and proof of service. And then, so Cindy, this is unique to Isabella County. We're the only county that serves paperwork.
Yes, I know. I just talked to Mandy about that, and they're trying to change it. I told them what Mecosta County did, so she was very interested in that. Yeah,
so that's a work in progress kind of thing.
Is the AOT only also something that we serve them?
Yes. Yep. Because it's an order, right?
Yep.
We're ordering them for treatment. And this is why the petition, whatever we fill on the order recommendations, has to match the petition, because that's what they get served. The petition, they don't get served our recommendations. The court uses our recommendations for what to put on the order. So when those two are varied, the courts still know which one we're asking for. So if we want to make sure that our recommendations are legit, if we're concerned about this person, we want them to follow through with treatment, we darn better make sure that what we recommend is on the order, is on the petition. So that same thing gets put on the order. So deferral. Okay. I will say, some of you know me, some of you know me quite well. I'm kind of direct, if you can't tell. One of my big pet peeves is when people say that they're on an order, however, it's a deferral. While it seems like that's not that big of a difference, it's a big difference. So in your banner, you're going to see either deferred AOT or a deferred combined. So remember earlier, I said that word combined is going to keep coming up, coming up, coming up. What are the two things that combined stands for?
Inpatient and outpatient days.
Yes, because we're doing two different types of service, of treatment. So anytime that you see combined, automatically think hospitalization is already in there. So a deferral, again, it's not in order, but what it means is that the person is under the jurisdiction of the courts. They're under the watchful eye of the court, but they're not in the court system yet for that instance, for that moment of crisis or need for mandated treatment. The reason being, one of the reasons why it's important is we live in a rural part of Michigan. We have a lot of people who hunt. If I were a person, potentially, if I was just, things are going really bad, I was at the hospital, I got on a deferral, I've never been on a court order, I can still purchase a gun to hunt, to enjoy my pastime, my hobby. Once a person is on an order, they can never legally purchase a gun again. Now, whether I'm not going to get into the discussion of whether the gun store owner, seller persons do their due diligence and what they're supposed to do. I'm just talking about this is the way that the law is set up. So that could be something that could help a person engage in treatment until the time, and that could be the breadcrumb that individual needs to go, oh, you know what, things are going kind of poorly in my life. I think I'm going to stick with this therapy stuff. It's working for me.
Shauna, is there a gray area with that? Is that what I'm thinking is what I've been told by some people is that they can have a rifle, but they can't have a gun. I never knew the answer to that.
That is a really good question. Man, Cindy, you've got some good questions. I thought it was just firearm in general.
I would assume so, but I can't assume it without knowing where to look to get the correct information for someone. They're like, nope, they can own, I am not a gun person. So those older guns where you have to stuff the stuff in like they did in World War II.
Muzzle loaders?
Yes, maybe they can own them. I don't know. I think it's something that I should know, but I don't know. And I don't know how to find that out.
I will find that out. And here's the other thing too, is that they can own guns that they've already had. Individuals do not have to surrender their weapons. It just prevents from further purchasing them.
Okay, that's good to know too.
Yeah. Yep. So, they basically, in a sense, the deferral is a gentleman's agreement between the individual and the lawyer saying, yep, I know I need treatment, I'll come to treatment. In the deferrals, typically, the recommendations on the deferrals usually are rather poor because that happens while they're at a mental health unit, and usually it's just follow up with CMH. follow all treatment recommendations. It's pretty disappointing as far as, you know, it makes it harder for us to say, well, you're not following treatment recommendations, because it just says follow treatment recommendations. Tell me what those are. That's why we have to do the order, the report recommendations. So if they are on a combined, that is a 6180. So I want you to start thinking in the sense of like a car warranty, 100,000 miles or 5 years, whichever happens first is when your warranty expires. Same concept. Whichever, if the person has been hospitalized for 60 cumulative days, it doesn't have to mean consecutive, then it will expire. Chances are by that time we're beyond a deferral. But that is the same is true for the inpatient or for the initial order. So this is the lovely deferral form. Like I said, it's pretty plain Jane. Here's the treatment recommendation, or the type. Is it inpatient, outpatient, or combined? So that's what will tell you what type of deferral it is. So now you have your deferral and you have to figure out, do I need to file a demand? Does this person continue to need mandated treatment? This is one of them that's got one of those really weird time frame windows period. So it's 14 days. That's supposed to say no later, not nor. No later than 7 days before the expiration period. So say today's the 13th, I'm on a deferral right now that expires the 21st. So today's the last day to file. So it was between July 6th and July 13th is your window if that person needs continued treatment. We're not talking about hospitalization at that point in time. We're just saying, you know what, they've shown that this could be a great case of individuals who we've missed their order and we know that they need an order, but they always are given a chance to defer. So we got that's our window to file the demand. If they're not doing well and they need hospitalization, we can file demand at any time. Just that small, tiny, sticky window is just if they're somewhat compliant, but we know that they still need treatment and we know that they're not going to follow through.
In my mind, I look at that as we could start it as early as June 28th.
If my deferral ends, what did I say? Which date?
Wait. Oh, 21st. Okay.
21st.
So the 7th through
7th to the 14th. I had to pull up a calendar.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, you're right. I don't know what I was thinking. I was looking at the wrong day.
That's okay. Here's your demand. Pretty easy. You're not the individual. You are the outpatient treatment provider. So number 5 is if they need hospitalization, and right here, court order a peace officer to transport. Here's your transport order. And then this is where you could put to the nearest ED or appropriate facility the individual is located at. I'll have to find out if that would be an MC97 gig. Because you're putting their address. I don't think so, because that's just saying where they're located at. That's not, it could be their home address, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it is their home address. And while it does not say to add their phone number, I would add their phone number to that. A lot of people get confused on what to do with a demand, when to do a demand. Do you do demand on an order? Do you do a demand? Do you need a doctor's appointment? Yada, yada, yada. I use weird stuff sticks in my brain. D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, demand deferral. That's the only time that you do a demand is when they're on a deferral. So that type of visual reminder helped me remember that when to do the demand. You do not need a court order appointment with the doctor because they're not on an order yet. So here's the,
Oh,
oh, go ahead.
can you do a demand at any point before it expires?
You have to do it either 7 to 14 days,
Oh, okay.
or if they're super sick and they need the hospital, then you can do it at any time. Good question.
How do you know if they're super sick if you can't find them?
Well, that would be a good, so there you don't have anything to indicate whether they need hospitalization or not. However, they're in violation of the demand. So what that, or of the deferral. So what this does is, because this gives you the pickup order for the hospital, it's just, if you check 5 for the pickup order, you're asking for them to be hospitalized until a hearing. So it's, especially if you have history on the person, if this is a consumer that you've had on your case list for quite a while, and you do know that when they are MIA, that they're ill, I would do the demand. You also have to provide an address of where you believe that they're located at. So that could present a challenge. So that's one of those situations where it's going to be very unique to the situation of what's going on. So again, the file number for the demand is the same one that's going to be on the deferral, which is the same one on the petition, because they keep that same file number throughout their lifetime in that county for mental health treatment.
What I don't know for this demand is, once we take that to the court, you were going to do something on the supplemental letter, but I don't know if that was next here. Do we serve them? Are we the ones serving them? Do we take it to the police department and tell them, hey, I think I put down their home address because that's typically where they are, but they could be at their friend's house at 1016 East Broadway, you know?
So let me ask you this. Did you check number 5?
It could, if I did, yeah.
Okay, so what's number 5 read?
So then we would just take that to the police.
Yep. And I intentionally did not answer that because if I would have answered it, it would not have stuck in your brain for you. So if we are doing the demand for hearing, and if we are asking them to be hospitalized, it's already embedded in there that the police are going to do the pickup. Therefore, we won't be serving them. We could have situations where we are not asking for them to be hospitalized. So we wouldn't be checking number 5.
Right.
Then we would be serving them. Or whatever, however the county has it set up, the probate has it set up of who does the serving.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I sense there still might be a question in there, but you're not quite sure what the question is. So sit on it and get back with me if you got more, okay? So the next few slides, you're going to see a lot of repetition. And I did that intentionally because that's what this process looks like. So initial AOT, what word is missing? There's no combined here. So this is outpatient for 180 days. What is not obvious is that there are 10 days of hospitalization embedded within that order. So this is why I say if it's a consumer who you need to develop some of that rapport with, you know eventually they'll need hospitalization, but they don't need hospitalization just yet. I would say just do the AOT only. If you can get them in, get them with our doc, get a cert on them. I would start there because we can easily modify that. The combined, so that's inpatient and outpatient. So here's your car warranty, 60 days, 6180. So 60 hospitalization days or 180 outpatient days, whichever number of days is used up first is when that order expires. This is important for individuals that are at an acute unit and are extremely ill, and we're working on a care placement for them. And they're sitting there and they're chewing up those hospitalization days. I would definitely put that on your radar to make sure that granted, the mental health unit, I would say typically would be the ones to fill out the paperwork to continue the order. If it were my case, I would make sure that order is done. I would have communication with whoever their social worker is on the unit, their caseworker, and I would make sure that they don't, because once they hit 60 days in the hospital, then this order's expired. Now we're back at square one on petition PCM 201. And then they get a chance to defer. And then we got to go through that whole entire process again before we get back up to here. For the rest of the orders, you have to file the paperwork at least 14 days before it expires. I did ask Mandy, our probate clerk in Isabella, there is not you can't file before X amount of time. There's not like that weird window for the deferral, the 14 days, 7 days. We could file this, maybe even if it's a 1 year, you could contact your probate office and say, hey, I'm filing this a month before it's expired. Here's their court date or their doctor appointment. Because remember, they got 7 days to get it on the books. So they've got a lot of rearranging potentially of other court dates to make sure that this hits the marker. Here's the PCM 218. So here's the first order. Now we're working on the second order. Again, the file number, that one's going to continue on. So one of the questions that was submitted earlier was, can we submit the petition to continue the order without the clinical cert? No. I would submit them together. You can give your probate a heads up. That's actually how our probate in Isabella prefers it. We email Mandy, once we get the court order appointment secured and say, hey, this is when the med review appointment is, and I'm going to be submitting the second order. And she'll already produce a court date for us and send it back. However, if the person doesn't show up for their med review, make sure that you contact probate and say that's got to be canceled because they didn't show up. One of the things that's nice about this updated form is that this takes the guesswork out of how many days to put on. So the second order is 90 days, which to the doctor, our doctor feels really weird because if they still need another order after this, so they just did a cert, and then I guarantee you the doctor's going to be like, didn't I just do a cert on them? Because this is only 3 months long. Here's that repetition. Second AOT, notice there's no combined there. 90 days, 10 days are still embedded within that order. Continued hospitalization. Sometimes people call it a 60-90 because it will last for 90 days of outpatient, 60 days for inpatient. To extend the order 14 days before it expires. We still need more treatment, still need more mandated treatment. So now you've got your petition for continuing. So notice the title on this. The one before is petition for second mental health treatment order. This one is petition for continuing treatment order. So you'll want to put in there. So now this petition, if you have an individual that is constantly on a reoccurring order every year, this is going to be your go-to petition. The one variation is going to be a second or continuing. So what was their order that they're on right now? Is it a second? When does it expire? Is it a continuing? When does it expire? You provide your same recommendations. Now they added in here, you'll notice, whoops, you'll add it in the hospitalization for not more than 1 year. That's typically going to be for your folks at Carroll. And then there's this one too, number 5, the individual is likely to refuse treatment on a voluntary basis when the order expires. So I get that question a lot, and I'll cover it again in here. So while my person's complying with treatment, I've got nothing to petition them on. What's their history show you? Do they get ill the moment that they're not on an order because they're not coming in? Continuing order? Yep, same thing. Nothing's combined here. So this is an AOT only. This is outpatient only for 365 days. You've got your combined, also referred to as a 91 year. So 90 days of hospitalization, 180 days of treatment. That's a typo. That should be 365 days for the continued. 14 days. And now, again, if you need to continue it, you're back to the cycle. So did you see the repetition in there of only, outpatient only, combined, dates, etc.? Here's your non-compliant. Yep, go ahead, Cindy.
How that was presented confused me, and I know about these, but I know it. But we still have to do the MC97 for these.
Yes, we will have to, because you have their date of birth on here. That's one of that. And seeing that was 13 days ago. So I'll have to figure out how I can update this to have it make sense. Because in my brain, the flow doesn't necessarily, to present it, I don't have a good thought process on how to present in a nice way. Was there a particular part, because you are very knowledgeable of this, is there a particular part that seemed to throw you off more, Cindy, than another part?
I think, it was when we went from the second order to the continuing. Maybe I just got lost. That is the helpful page, that other one. Like continuing AOT, these are all continuing, not second. So,
right.
Well,
so
kind of second in a sense, but the second is literally the one that's right after the first one. And then all the others are considered continuing.
And how I finally got it to stick in my brain is, you know how typically with our counties, we just give them the initials of the first, or we abbreviate it to the first 3 letters, Isabella, ISA. Well, I, in my mind, changed that a little bit to ISC, Isabella County, because then I've got the initial, second, continuing. That's how I remembered the order.
Yeah, I know the order. I don't know where I got mixed up here, but
no, that, and and a lot of people get confused on the order too. So, all right, non-compliance. I'm only going to talk about it for a little bit because there's so many nuances with it. Here's the beginnings, the lookings of the form. If you want to change the order, that's when you're going to do the modification. So if you get to, a lot of times the purpose for non-compliance, sometimes it's just it's our due diligence. We know that it might not have a huge impact on the person, but we are mandated to oversee this individual's treatment with the courts. So if they're not following through with treatment, how come we didn't let the courts know? we let them know by filing the non-compliance. We could have absolutely zero expectations out of the non-compliance, and that is A-okay. Sometimes it's a matter of what I've heard of when they have been very helpful is, so folks that are on a 1 year have the 6-month review, or individuals who want to petition to be discharged from an order. And if they haven't been filing or following through with treatment, but we never let the courts know it, the court has no supporting documentation in their file to say that they're not following through with treatment. I literally have heard from our ACT team that filing a non-compliance has made a difference in whether a person's order was discharged upon their request or not. So this is our way to let the courts know that, yep, we're watching, we know that they're not following through. Sometimes there's just not a whole lot we can do about it.
My experience with like non-compliance, just because they missed an appointment with you because they went to the dentist, might not necessarily need a non-compliance order. You know, that's when we make our clinical judgment of assessment. And, you know, if they're saying, F you, I'm just not going to be there, well, then quite possibly. But, you know, I always give them the benefit of the doubt at first. And, you know, once I reach them and say, hey, I'm sorry I missed you the other day. Oh yeah, my sister came to pick me up and we went grocery shopping. Oh, that's, you know, that's what I thought. You're usually really good about attending my appointments. So
Yep.
I don't want people to be jumping on a non-compliance every time the person doesn't answer their phone or something. You know, it's certainly case by case basis, but.
Yep, and I'm glad that you brought that up, Cindy. And that's one of the reasons why I just don't go knee deep into the non-compliance, because there's so many nuances. It's always just better to, if you're wondering, should it be done, consult with your supervisor, give me a call. You know, I'll be happy to, we'll do a chart review together. We'll piece apart the chart and see if it's something that we need to do or not.
Great.
Subpoenas, the petitioner is the one that's subpoenaed. So if it's an initial, typically it wouldn't be you guys. If it's the very first petition to start the process and they've been hospitalized, usually that's not us that does the petition. Sometimes it is. I don't want to throw a blanket statement out there. A lot of times it's CMIT. So CMIT, you potentially could get subpoenaed. And then the doctor, whoever completed the clinical cert, has to be subpoenaed as well. One piece that I learned through a learning experience is if you are the one that's petitioned and the individual does have a guardian, I would highly suggest saying, hey guardian, I got this petition. There's court scheduled. You should come with me because you have to. And then if they need a subpoena, at least tell probate. Courts don't like it when you don't tell the guardian and then the guardian doesn't show up. Then you call the guardian and they're in Florida. We'll leave it at that. So I put this in there because the court process can be overwhelming. And it's really easy to get a ho-hum attitude about it because of that overwhelmingness, because missing one piece and oh my gosh, this person's breathing down my neck. And there's so many different pieces to coordinate. But really, you know, step by step, that's all we can do. It's just one day at a time. So this is just a good point to remember to breathe. And there's always the phone a friend option. I will be happy to talk to you and walk you through, explain any process. And honestly, I don't care what day or time it is. Well, I do care what time it is. I mean, I'm not going to answer the call at 2 o'clock in the morning. Not anymore. I have. I'll answer calls on the weekend if you're trying to figure out something for the following week. If I am in a spot where I don't get service, of course, I'm not going to answer. So just reach out to me. So some tips and other information. So this one, I've mentioned it a couple of times. Did some front loading for you guys throughout the presentation of when do I continue it? Should we continue this order or not? So you want to look at the medical necessity. You want to look at their insight, what their treatment history is. I will tell you, it is very common, and I understand why. A lot of people will say, well, I've never met this person before, so I can't give any input. Sure you can, because I'm going to be given it. The expectation oftentimes is, well, you give input, Shauna, does this order need to continue or not? So I do a chart review. That's, even if you haven't met with the person, you still have, if they're assigned to you, you still have access to that chart. How many times have they been hospitalized? Is this do they tend to have the same type of decomposition that results in hospitalization? Do they continue to have a lack of insight? You can provide input to a person that you've never met before. You have all the information at hand. So the way in Isabella, we're really working on getting this to be very structured, and that I can imagine for some it's felt very yes, I can imagine it's felt micromanaging, because that's what we're doing right now. That's what we've had to do to clean up our court orders. And, because for a long time, the documentation would get scanned into the chart and we would never know. Therefore, no banner would be created. It would get scanned in and it would get put under other legal documentation. It would get scanned. There was a while that I was uploading documents, and for some reason, it would not show up in all scanned. I emailed Jane Cole back and forth about it, and she's like, there's something you're doing. I'm like, no, it's not. I've done this before. It shows. It's not showing now. Well, it's got, so this is why we've come up with a very structured way to monitor our court orders. So we have one of our clerical staff, she has a spreadsheet, and every time someone gets either a deferral or a court order, they go on that spreadsheet. She initiates, or the case holder initiates, a consultation note 60 days before it's set to expire, whether it's a deferral, whether it's an order. In that issue, so in the consultation note, I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. You put in there your clinical rationale, you include all of the members to make the final determination. So this is what it would look like. Here's in the issue, that top box. Joe Bob needs to, I'm going to file a demand. I'm going to continue his order because he's continuing to show lack of insight, evident by not attending, nor compliance, because he's not attending appointments. He has presented in crisis, but he's not coming to my appointments. He continues to be, this is the pattern that led to his last hospitalization. It's reasonable to expect that he's going to need hospitalization again. Therefore, I'm requesting to continue the order. So you're providing, in that top box, you're providing your clinical rationale. And this is where it gets, and I'm sure that I've frustrated some people, and honestly, I'm okay with that. People say, well, I've talked to my supervisor. Great. Let's put it in the chart what you talked about. Because what we're looking for is in that consultation note, if you didn't file an order, if you guys decided to let it lapse, and then he presents in crisis 6 months, 90 days, 1 year later, I want to look at to see what was your guys' determination. Why did you let it lapse? Most of the time, because you have a whole team that's agreeing to why you're letting it lapse, I'll be able to understand that justification. But if it's just in there to say, well, we talked with my supervisor and we both agreed, I'm going to give you a little bit of pushback and say, okay, give me that clinical rationale of to why you want it to go on or why you don't want it to go on. Then in the recommendation part, that bottom box, recommending order to continue, recommending order to lapse. Once you have now you've got who to assign that consultation note to. If they get health services with us, I would assign the assigned RN. If they don't get health services with us, I would assign it. If they get OPT and you're the case manager, I would assign the case, assign whoever is someone else assigned to that case, because this is a team decision. This isn't anything a decision you have to make on your own. Nobody's shoulders needs to be that big. We all have different perspectives of why we see things. And if you've been in an Isabella team huddle before, me and Cindy, we love to go back and forth. And I'm like, no, this is why we need an order. And she's like, no, this is why we need to let it drop. And that's okay. That's what this process is about. She helps me see things that I don't see. I help her see things that I don't see. And then we come together. And then more so for KP, more for you, if they're a non-CMH person, what you're doing is you're reaching out to their community provider, their primary doctor. This is too, if they don't get our health services, are they on meds? Are they following through with their doctor there? Are they following through with their community therapist? Document, support your rationale, just like in the petition. This is where I said we see it in the beginning and we potentially see it at the end. That same A, B, and C, we're looking for A, B, and C still. Is it reasonable to expect they're going to hurt themselves or someone else? Are they not taking care of the ADLs? Do they have insight? And what do we suspect the future is going to bring? CC all the team members, including your supervisor. Isabella County, I recommend that you guys throw me on there too, because then a lot of people just defer to me. This is, like I said, it works up in here. So if you're going to continue it with a disposition, you would schedule your court order appointment, not for a deferral. We don't need it for a deferral. Do all the right documentations, follow whatever protocol your county has set up. That one of the things in Isabella County is all court paperwork has to be reviewed by me before it goes to probate. It's not because I like to micromanage. Trust me, people who know me, I'm very not type A. But we've had so many issues and things have been missed with our probate person. This is our way of checks and balances. Okay, I do get everything. And I ask people to proofread my stuff that I send to the courts because I miss things too. It's just another set of eyes. And then once it's, court scheduled and you guys are ready to rock and roll, close the note. If the agreement is to let it expire or lapse, the team agrees, you send it to your soup signs off, supervisor sends it to PD signs off, yep, I agree, close the note. Now we have all of our clinical documentation right there in that consultation note of why we're continuing the order or why we're not. So some tips and tricks: use your Outlook calendar, use your to-do list in Sigma. The last data file is not the data file. Sometimes it does happen. Sometimes if the person doesn't show up, you miss things. We are all human. We all have oversights, but it's really a lot better if we're not waiting to that 14th day. Demands D&D. What else? So here's they're complying with treatment, but what do we do? So again, you're looking for that clinical rationale. I'm not coming in as soon as this order is done. Does their history show as soon as they're off in order? I know Erica can attest to this with a lot of ACT people. As soon as they're off in order, poof, and sometimes it's past that, like magically they know, that 14-day window is closed, and then they are no show, don't come in for their injection, and they just go down. So if you know that about the person's history, that would be a reason to continue. There's not a set number of days on, this attests to Cindy's statement regarding the non-compliance. There's not a set number of how many missed appointments. We are all clinical. We're looking at this from a clinical perspective. What does missing their appointments, what does that correlate to for this person? Face-to-face contact is always the best for individuals to after discharge from a mental health unit. Good rule of thumb, if you're not sure what to do, talk to somebody else. I just kind of threw this in there because this is good ongoing discussion, parts with your team, parts to think about, because there are ethical dilemmas with being the petitioner. There are challenges working with someone that's mandated for treatment. I did put my resources in here of where I found the information at. Here's that link to SCOA, their page, where I always, anytime I go to print off any of my pages for whether it's a petition, continued, whatnot, always go to their website, because I have ran into it before where they have updated the forms and we were not notified. So you're guaranteed to get the most up-to-date forms on their website. Okay, you guys, your head's about ready to explode.
I just want to clarify on one thing with MC 97. So since we have that filled out and it's not public, just 1 through 5, we don't fill out any of that information on our orders, our deferrals. We just put CMC 97.
Yes, and then you would put the corresponding case number. I'm imagining it probably, and I've only seen, because this is so new, it's not even 2 weeks old, I haven't seen one come through yet. So I've got to look. I imagine, where'd it go? I imagine it will be the same case number in that top right corner. I imagine it's going to be the same case number that's on the petition and things that have been filed already.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just my hypothesis.
Okie doke.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
I got one. How long can this go on for a person? Like, you know, for some of our chronic consumers, it just goes and goes like with them, or?
I'm going to defer to Erica.
It depends on your county. In Midland, our probate court judge encourages them to continue if it's somebody with a severe persistent mental illness with a history of noncompliance. So some of them have been on an order for like 10 years. Other judges, they want like very current information of noncompliance, and they may not continue the order unless there's something that like a hospitalization or something, a major decompensation in the last year, you know, so it depends on the county, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Part of, and especially given the current state of affairs that our world is in right now, one, we know, I'm preaching to the choir in this one, we know debilitating mental health concerns are through the roof. We know that with COVID, people lost their sense of purpose. They gained hopelessness, helplessness. Violent crimes are on the rise. And just because a person has a mental illness is not a direct correlation to a violent crime. However, public awareness has definitely increased. I know in Isabella County, there was 1 week where we had 3 major violent issues happen all within the same week, all related to mental health, whether they were getting services or whether it may not have even been that the crime was a result of their mental illness, but that's what's in the newspaper. So part of this court process is that we're mandated by the state to oversee that they're getting treatment. We've been mandated to protect the individual and to protect the community anytime someone's on an order. And to me, I take that very serious. And I like to examine all avenues of it. I also open up and enjoy that. Let's look at this. I just have one set of eyes. So let's look at the case together. But I do take it very serious that, you know, we have to make our due diligence. And this becomes really difficult for those that are overseeing non-CMH people on an order, because we oversee anybody on an order, regardless if we're treating the treatment providers or not. So we got to make sure that we're trying to, because if it comes down to it and something severe happens and they've been on an order or they're on an order or the order lapsed because we missed a date, we're going to get some big questions. And I want to be able to, that's one of the reasons why I'm so big on this consultation note, put in your clinical rationale. Because if I get asked, I want to be able to go, this is why we didn't. This is why we did. It's just a good business practice.
How does the court like track or monitor the timing? Like, say I violate my probation, I'm on a court order, do my days start over? You know, if I get out and try to get back on track, and how does that all work?
The courts don't track timelines. We do.
So how do we do that?
Well,
Like,
we do
start
that-
over, or,
are you talking about the 60 days?
I think so.
Like, so if they've been in the hospital, like the car warranty thing, the 5,000 miles or
yeah,
5 years,
yeah.
that's
yeah.
us. And so if you do have someone who's on an order, you literally start counting days. You look at the emergency screens and it will have in there how many days they've been in the hospital. Now, the tricky thing with that is you cannot say I was hospitalized from May 1st to May 31st. You can't count, though I don't want to say you can't. Do not just jump in and go, okay, I'm starting from May 1st, is counting as part of those days. Because I might not have been on the order on May 1st. Maybe I was there for a week. So you've got to go from the time, the date that order was signed. So maybe that order was signed on May 13th. So then you would count from May 13th to May 30th. And that's how many days out of that 60 count towards that 60. The court doesn't keep track of anything for us. They don't give us any kind of notification on, that's why in Isabella, we're so militant. That might be the best word to describe other than micromanage. We're a little militant on it. Because we've missed those timeframes, and it's very frustrating to probate because now they have to schedule all of that much more. Erica?
I was gonna say, isn't there a report on the internet too that Shantae has?
There is. And the internet report is only as good as our banners that get entered. So that AOT report, which they have it named wrong, they call it an ATO report, they haven't changed it. But that AOT report is contingent on whether there's a banner uploaded, because that's where it's pulling that data from. That's why here in Isabella, that's why Jennifer Robb keeps that track of on that spreadsheet, because I cannot tell you how many different orders I have had stumble through and they missed it. And if you have like, Nicole Seaman has a host, I think last time it was high teens or low 20s of how many individuals that she has on court orders. How many,
22.
Nicole? 22.
Yep.
So we literally have scheduled an appointment and got the calendar out and went through, this time, we marked our days, and I am very okay with setting time aside in my calendar for that. And then she keeps her own tracking. There's a few people that I am the overseer of the court order. I use my Outlook calendar the most. So I put those dates in my Outlook calendar. That's why we set up in Isabella, that's why Jennifer Robb starts the consultation note. That's why when she sends you this has been uploaded into our system, then I send you that email of, okay, here's your time frame. I'm trying to make it easier for you guys to just go wham, I'll put it on your calendar. You don't have to think about it. Then I set a delayed response to that email, and I have that delayed response to come out, and I just say see below, and that delayed response comes out 60 days before it expires. So then you'll get another reminder. So we're trying to do everything that we can on our end to help not miss that. But if there's anything I can do to help you remember it, I got the time.
And we don't have that same type of system with clerical support for those. But that report is pretty helpful. It's under on the internet under quality. I just found it under data and reports.
Yeah.
So if you guys need a list of yours. And then
Isabella County, we
ATO.
have a lot of orders because we've got we got CMU here, and we've got the tribe. So we get a lot of court orders from the tribe, and then we've got a lot of community. Midland has a lot of community providers too, but we just have a very large amount. I think last time I looked, we have over 70 on orders. Plus Nicole oversees all of the out of catchment folks, the people that are at Carroll that are to somebody else's county. So we had to come up with a system because it was just overwhelming. And that's why for Isabella folks, that's why when you get that email and we say you need to CC me, Jennifer, Rob, Christy, and Chris. So the 4 of us, so that's our tracking on, okay, did the order recommendations, did those get sent through? Is that order done? Is, all of that good stuff. What other questions?
So if your banner is going to change because something's changed as it goes through the process, who does that, or how do you?
In Isabella,
request it?
Jennifer,
Yeah,
Rob does, or myself.
that's what you said.
Midland, the case holder does.
Okay.
And I'm just jotting down who's all here to send the email with the information to, the handouts. Oh, Cindy asked about the supplemental letter. So one of the things that I put in the chat, one of the files is this. Chat, oh, not chat, share screen, probate template. So this is just a template for the demand. You have to supply a supplemental letter as to why you're filing the demand. And personally, if you have a complicated case, if it's not necessarily clear why you're doing a second order or a continued order, there's nothing that restricts us to not provide a supplemental letter. So this is just already one of those things. Obviously, it's set up for Isabella County Probate, so you guys can change this to Midland County. I think it's 301 South Main, Judge Allen. You give your reasoning of why you're writing, your supporting rationale to why you want to continue. Again, this is something that the individual gets. We don't need to provide a 2-page letter. We don't need to give at 9:07, this happened, 9:13, this happened, I've seen it. There's just too much information. We want to provide, again, why A, B, and C. Unintentional harm to self or others, not taking care of basic needs, lack of insight to treatment. As long as you get those covered. So you can use it, you can tweak this to however that you feel would be appropriate. And I'll include this in the email as well. What else?
So to be clear, I'm trying to store all this. So I have a gentleman who's on the AOT, what was it again? Where he's got both or something. Let me see.
Combined.
Yeah, combined. It expires at the end of September. And I say something to you like 30 days in advance. Is that
60 days?
Oh, 60. Okay.
Yep. And the reason why it's 60 days, because if they're on an order and we need to get a med review, a court order med review scheduled, so the 60 days allows for the treatment team discussion. Do we continue? Don't we? Then it allows for time to get that appointment scheduled as well. Okay. And I know it feels like a lot, it feels like way in advance notice, but that's why. And then it also that allows for some space too of if the person doesn't show up for their first court order appointment with doc, we got enough time to schedule another one.
Okay. That'll be in 2 weeks then. Okay. I'll make a note on my calendar.
You'll also get a consultation note by Cindy. Thank you. You will also get a consult note from Jennifer Robb. She initiates it, and her consult note will just be, set to expire September 18th.
Okay.
That's what she puts. Then now your first reaction, a lot of times people, because they're not comfortable with this yet, a lot of times they'll put in their submitting to the team for review. Okay, you're part of the team. Give me some of your clinical rationale of why you think that we should continue or not continue. So she just plants that seed.
Perfect. So there will always be somebody, I guess you could say, like, I don't have to put it on my calendar to remind myself, or should I do that too, just for like added?
If it were me, I would be having it on my calendar.
Okay.
That's
All right.
my suggestion. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but my suggestion for me, if it was my case, I'd put it on my calendar.
Okay. Doing now.
All right. Well, I think you got, yeah, Lisa,
I got one more. What happens if you do miss it?
you missed it.
Get fired. No, I'm just kidding.